Dr. Owusu Ochoa. It's Dr. O for the 804. As the premier knee and hip shoulder sports surgeon in Virginia, I would like to remind you that health equals power. Sports build and uplift communities, nothing else can. The mission of sports medicine is to keep athletes of all ages and levels at the top of their game. Dr. O is located at Ortho, Virginia, Schrader Road office location. Appointments can be scheduled online at orthovirginia.com or by calling 804-939-6688. You can follow Dr. O on Instagram at Dr. O _ for the 804 and uplifting educational content about sports health.
Hi everyone, I'm Coach Rick Stockel. I am co-owner of Newman & Dunn Real Estate here in Central Virginia, as well as I am a high school boys basketball coach at Monacan High School. I've sold over 1,300 homes here in Central Virginia, and I would love to work with you and your family in your home buying needs. I am a proud primary sponsor of Ballin' in Virginia, and I hope you enjoy this show.
Welcome to another episode of Ballin' in VA. Today, man, I got Gary and Gary in the house, 804 high school football. Gary Hess, Gary Criswell, man, the legends in the house. How y'all doing?
We're good, man. We're good. You know, still recovering from another season.
Oh, yeah.
But good.
Yeah, I was looking forward to a Tuesday night out, but you talked me into getting out.
Yeah, I had to get you guys in here, man. You know, first of all, man, I just want to thank y'all for coming on, man, because you guys give me the opportunity to do what I do. I learn from the best, and I'm still new at this. I'm the baby in this, you know, but you guys have been doing this for a very long time, and I just want to thank you for all that you do for high school sports, because we need it right now, man. You know, it's in a state of flux, but the coverage of high school football, we definitely need that for the area. And I know a lot of these high schools, speaking on behalf of these high school coaches and players, I know they really appreciate it.
Well, I am, I said I've kind of gathered the title of the voice of high school football in Richmond. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling Lane Casadante in a story he did about me a couple of years ago. I'm like, how did that even happen? You know, but I'm honored to be a part of the landscape. I just, you know, there's something about Friday Night Lights and high school football, and I have really enjoyed it for, I can't believe it's been 3 decades now.
Yes. I mean, man, you think about it, man, and I started listening, you know, in the late 90s on, you know, Sports Radio 910.
Yep.
And I think my son was just born by that time. And that's the listening to sports coverage, especially, you know, when I think Henrico and Verona was playing during that time.
Yep.
When I first started listening, you know, and the coverage was great. So to be sitting here, I never imagined I'd be sitting here with you guys. So I just want to say thank you, man. It's appreciated. I just don't know what to say.
Henrico Verona, I remember that game very well, 1999.
Yeah, was it Alexander?
Yep.
Yep.
Threw a long touchdown pass, went up 7-0, and then Verona scored 42 straight.
See what I'm saying? See, I just rolled that off. See what I'm saying?
And then they lost. I traveled with the team. Dave Bedwell was the coach at Henrico. People forget that, you know, he got them into the state finals. Mm-hmm. And I traveled with the team up there and did the reports live because we could only choose one game at a time. Mm-hmm. And then Verona and Henrico thankfully had split into 5 and 6. Yeah. And they played on a 70-degree day.
Yes, I remember.
City Stadium, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
And crushed our hearts out. Henrico lost 21-17, I think, to Culpeper. And
all I remember is the entire city of Culpeper filled up the opposite stands at City Stadium. I was like, it'd be a good day to commit a crime in Culpeper because there's nobody there.
Well, nobody there.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember.
By the way, I found out you can't say that on the air. Stuff like that. There's a good time to break into people's houses and stuff like that. I did it for a high school baseball game, I think, and a couple people took exception to it, including the sheriff.
Yeah, the results did not go our way that day, but you know, 804 football has changed a lot in the 30 years that I've been doing it, and it's great that the last decade plus has been a steady diet of rings for the 804. A lot of state titles.
And it's funny that you say that because I listened earlier today that I didn't realize that this year was the first year we hadn't had anybody to bring any rings home.
In a long time.
Yeah, in the public school last year, I believe, was 2011.
Yep, 2011. Yeah, because I remember you saying 2010. I was at the Hermitage Battlefield game.
Right. And then 2011, Hermitage lost to Centerville in the semis. We didn't have anybody playing state titles that year.
Yeah, I was at that game.
And then in 2012, Bird started the run, and it was on from there.
It was on from there. Yeah, so I was just like, wow. I said, man, I did not realize that. So y'all got to use that against my argument against the people from 757. I had to kind of let them know that.
Oh no, we've seeded that, and that's where there, Morey came along in a good time.
Yes.
Because without Morey being able to, flex a muscle a little bit, and they've, that's a cool history. Norfolk City schools have a cool history. I remember when I was first started coaching in high school at Henrico, I was coaching wrestling, and I got my first time at Morey was, they were hosting a state wrestling tournament, and the depth of how good they were in a lot of sports, but football was not one of them. But then they had other people like Lake Taylor and come through. But so they've had these waves, and we've had different contenders too. But the granddaddy of all of them, of course, is Hampton.
Yes.
And and people think 757, and that's exactly right. But it's more complicated than it is in Richmond. If you think Hampton is close to Virginia Beach, it's having driven from Hampton to Virginia Beach.
Right.
There are days where basically Hampton's the halfway point from Richmond to
Exactly.
Exactly.
But yeah.
You talk about Hampton, I was talking to Tom Hall after the game on Saturday, and Billy Mills hit the 200-win milestone this year.
Okay.
Lauren Johnson's knocking on the door of 200, and 200's a big number. And Tom Hall is right on the cusp of 200 if and when he gets back in the game.
I know what you're going to say, though.
But when you think Mike Smith is over 500
wins,
that is nuts. And you got to give him his due for that.
You definitely got to give him his flowers for that. I mean, you got 12 state titles,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of national championships. Yeah.
So when I told people I was going to coach in Hampton, they assumed it was Hampton High School.
I would have.
Even though my boss that took me from Virginia Union to Hampton, Joe Taylor, is now in the College Football Hall of Fame, he's the AD at Virginia Union where we first worked together. And he was also on the college football selection committee.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yep. Well, he paid me to keep it down until it was all over.
Are you allowed to say that?
I am allowed to say that because it's over with now. And I can't remember.
There was a few pictures in the room where you could see him.
I sent a freeze frame of a little snippet that ESPN put in about it, because by that time, I think of course, it's not going to be as hotly contested with 12 teams next year. But the story was that College Football Hall of Fame, turns out they don't let all the inductees speak when they're inducted.
Wow.
They meet and they decide who's going to speak for them, and Coach Taylor was chosen to speak for them.
Wow, that's cool.
And the guy that's the chairman of the committee was sitting in the audience, I talked to him about a month into the first process, and he said, I thought flying back and forth from Dallas was going to be glamorous. It stopped being glamorous by the second week.
I bet it was.
Yeah, so.
What did it all start for you guys? Kind of, give us a background for those who don't know.
So in 1993, 910 was not a sports station just yet. It was in the process of becoming one, WRNL. And we got bought by Clear Channel, a corporate, and they decided to move 910 to Church Hill, where WRVA was, put the 2 a.m. the news operations together. And in that process, it became a sports station. During that year, Mike O'Toole, one of our sales guys, wanted to kind of get we're doing a bunch of local stuff in this new going to the sports format. They decided to do high school football. And we had So, you think about some of the people in the building. Steve Molesky was in the building. He's now working full-time with the Baltimore Orioles. Bob Black was there then.
Yep.
Steve Stewart was there then, who is one of the voices, I believe, of either the Cardinals or the Royals now. He was doing the Richmond Braves then.
Did South Carolina.
Right. We had a lot of guys. Robert Fish was still involved. Bob McFarland, Spanky McFarland was there. And so they did some afternoon games. They did night games, and it was a bunch of different guys. And I'll never forget, I don't know if it was late September, my number came up, and I went to my first game was at Hovey Field between Huguenot and John Marshall.
Wow.
Tony Coles was playing quarterback for Huguenot.
Huguenot, yep.
And that was my first broadcast. And I only did a couple of games during the season, did a couple of playoff games, and kind of shook out a little bit. And by 94, the next year, Robert Fish and I pretty much split up all the night games. Okay. Bob McFarland did the afternoon game.
Yep.
And I did the whole playoff run. And 94 was Patrick Henry with the Country Kitchen and with Damian Woody and Aaron Kinney and Derek Cott and Andre Curtis. And, man, was that team loaded.
I try to tell people that.
At that 94 Patrick Henry team, I'm going to tell you what, they were something else. They were loaded.
Tim, how many times did you hear me say that on this show?
And so that was my first state championship broadcast. I did that whole playoff run. 95, I think Fish did one or two games. It was mostly me. I did all the playoff games. And that 95 season for us ended, and Coach Chris has heard me talk about this many times. Coach Rinaldi and I drove to Lynchburg and did Lee Davis against EC Glass in state semis. It may be the best game I've done in 30 years. It was amazing. Lee Davis lost in overtime, 34-32. And then by then it was kind of me, and O'Toole ran it, and then, over the course of several years, it kind of morphed into, Robert Fish helped out some, and I kind of became the main guy. And then we went on into the 2000s. We moved back to the West End, and I've kind of managed it for the last 20 years or so. And Coach Rinaldi decided to kind of step away, and it's still surreal to me. I don't know how you feel about this, Gary, that Coach Rinaldi's not with us anymore. He's been gone for several years now. But and I know he's still with us in spirit. There was nobody like Coach Rinaldi. And in that late 90s, we added the scoreboard show, and Bill McDonald and Coach Chris did that. And Gary brought reporters to the table. And, I can still hear people talk to me to this day about sitting in the driveway, in their driveway at their house, listening to the scoreboard show instead of going in the house. Janice Chilcote talks about that all the time, how she would sit in the car and listen to the scoreboard show because she wanted to hear the reporters and the coaches. And Gary and Bill did a great job with that show. And then we've just kind of grown it over the years. And Gary left the station, came back to us, and then kind of joined us in the booth for the last couple of years during the playoffs. And then it was a natural transition when Coach Rinaldi stepped aside to have Gary come in the booth with me. And that 15 seasons later, we're still at it.
It was meant to be. Okay. And I'll tell you how, and I'll try to catch up with the story, because when Gary got started, I was still coaching at Hampton University. And, of course, I was recruiting this area. I was from this area. I had been at Virginia Union previously. We were working a long period of time with Coach Taylor. And actually, when I first started doing stuff in the radio, I was actually still doing some analyst work for Hampton.
Okay.
But I knew I was going to get in the corporate world. And but you mentioned the Patrick Henry team. The head coach Ray Long and I went head to head as JV coaches in the early '80s, and I want the record to show that I'm 2-0 against him. But he I could see it. I could see it happening. It was already gonna happen, and so that excited me. But the biggest thing was to grow up in Richmond, because when Coach Rinaldi was there the first time, I remember bits and pieces. A guy named Frank Soden did sports, and I remember hearing the Friday night games intermittently as a child. Then I played at Henrico, and I was not a great player, but I was one of those guys. I was a late bloomer, and all my teammates who were all Americans and all Metro and all get together with me and said, "I'm just glad you're not that wasn't that big when you were playing." But no, it was great, and then I got to coach there with some real legends, and it was. But Coach Rinaldi, what made it really cool being with Coach Rinaldi was when he came back from New Jersey in the early '70s and built Highland Springs up to where it was, in stretches, but until it got dominant in the last few years. He was instrumental in me being able to get a college job, because I got tired of seeing 8 men in the box. And I was, as a young JV coach, we were throwing the ball 20 times a game. In fact, my quarterback that did throw the ball 20 times a game is now the center judge. I cut on the TV, and he's the center judge at the Virginia Tech game as a football official.
Oh, wow.
And so we had good teams, just couldn't put it over the hump. And I coached wrestling and track and golf and everything else there. But I got an opportunity at college, and one of the reasons I went to college camps was to learn what they were doing. And all of a sudden, we started running one back, and all those things are instrumental. And the Highland Springs coaches not only kidded me about it, they were very, very supportive about it. And Coach Rinaldi took it as kind of a badge of honor that I was able to be able to, and it was a bunch of guys, young guys that trained him, and I ended up coaching with them when they came over to Henrico, told me stories about him. And so it just meshed together really well. And I don't even remember Gary suggesting to me that, hey, let's slide in the booth.
We got to talking one night about him coming to it. So 06 and 07, he did the third man in the booth during the playoffs.
Okay.
Right.
And then 08, and then 07, was Coach Rinaldi's last year. And then Gary and I started working together in 08. And by that point, it seemed very like an obvious organic move.
Right.
I don't remember how 06 even happened, because I remember 06, the regional championships, Highland Springs and Varina played at Varina, and they played at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And Gary came, and we did that game, which I don't know how we fit 3 people in the booth at Varina.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I got news for you. I put my hands on Coach Rinaldi's shoulders.
You were behind us.
And every time I worked a game with him from then on, I put him on his shoulders, because I had listened to him so many times when I was in town in Richmond, on the off weeks when I could, in Hampton. I would, you do exactly what you do. You go to a game and look at a player. Well, I tuned in the game to hear what they were doing.
And you know what was interesting? That they made that game a 1 o'clock game on Black Friday, and then we were like, that was D6.
Yeah.
D5 was Deep Run against Matoaka.
Okay.
And we were like, and they were playing Friday night down in Matoaka, and we were like, hey, Friday at 1 o'clock, 7 o'clock, let's do both games.
Right.
And so he came with us and did the first game. And then you went in studio, right?
Yep, I did.
And
fell asleep.
and did scoreboard show after the game. We went to dinner, and then we drove down to Matoaka, and that was the game where I believe it was 35-3 at halftime in favor of Matoaka, and Deep Run came back and won.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, that was Coach Lenny Pritchard was the head coach of Deep Run. Stu Brown was on his staff.
Oh wow!
And listen, Deep Run was very, very good. That was Deck McGuire and Antone Exum, who played at Virginia Tech, and Matoaka had was it Chris Bird?
Yeah,
and had
was Birdsong on that? Because I was with Birdsong. We were with Birdsong.
I'm not. I don't remember. It runs together. I just know there was a lot of good players on the field that day, and that was an amazing comeback. And then. But, it's kind of funny. I got to thinking, we did that Patrick Henry game in 94. And, the way things morphed over the next decade, I got to thinking, wow, at least I did one state championship game. You know what I'm saying?
And we had no reason to think otherwise.
Well, winning state championship game.
Right.
79, Petersburg, Patrick Henry in 94.
So 96, Patrick Henry gets back. and they play Ronald Curry and Hampton
Was it the same team?
at Hovey Field.
Right.
No, that was not the same. That was not the same team.
Right.
But it was to Ray Long's credit that team made it to the state championship game, but they were no match for the Hampton Crabbers.
None.
And if you know anything about that day at Hovey Field, it poured
Yep.
the entire day.
It was nasty.
And 51-0 was the final, and it could have been worse than that. And I can still close my eyes and see Ronald Curry playing free safety 25 yards off the line of scrimmage with his hands in his hand warmers.
Wow.
Just in case they needed it. Next year, Patrick Henry got back, lost to the state semis to Hampton in what I believe was Curry's senior year. Then we got to 99 where we had two teams playing, neither one of them won. And then 01, we had Patrick Henry got back again, and I believe that was Anthony Martinez.
Yeah, shout out to Martinez.
And they lost to Xavier Deeby and Phoebus. And Thomas Dale lost to Mike Emo and Robinson, another doubleheader loss at City Stadium. So the 804 just can't get over the hump.
We could not.
But then Hopewell in 03, Meadowbrook in 04. And I'm a Meadowbrook grad. Getting to call the Meadowbrook state championship win was one of the great highlights of my career.
Okay.
And then we had another dip, but then Thomas Dale in 09.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
And then 2012 from there. We did several of those Thomas Dale games, and they beat Meadowbrook in week 9 or week 10. Meadowbrook was undefeated, and a 35-34 game.
I remember that.
And at that point, Thomas Dale was like magic carpet ride. Of course, Mother Nature helped them against Oscar Smith in the semis.
It did, yes.
Because
everybody else had canceled.
Okay, maybe Mother Nature helped a lot.
It did, because everybody else's game was canceled, right?
No, I think they played.
A few.
Yeah, because it was like a storm, a tropical storm.
Right, but Vic Williams was like, our home game, we're playing.
We're playing, which was smart on his behalf.
And then Thomas Dale beat Lake Braddock the next week, and I still can't believe talking about that less than 12 months later, Coach Williams was gone.
He's gone, yeah, he was
sick. So, and then, I think about that, and then, David Bedwell and the run at Byrd really changed things. When you think about 12, 13, 14, and then 4 in a row with Highland Springs, and that fourth one with Highland Springs was 2018, and that's the day Gary and I got to do 2 games in the same place, in the same day, and 9-10 had done doubleheaders in 99, in 2001, where we went 0-2 those 2 days. In 2018, the 804 went 2-0. Highland Springs and Manchester, we got to do both games. That was really, really cool. And so it's been, the evolution's been great. But yeah, it has morphed. We had a scoreboard show, it went away, it came back, it's gone away again. And, now with the advent of social media, we're able to keep track of scores on site. So much has changed. But, being there on Friday nights and documenting the game of the week is, it's a lot of fun.
What was the turning point for you in your mind? We've never talked about this, about when we thought there might be another side to what we did in football. And to me, I'll answer the question. In other words, why do we do videos of us riding to the game?
Yes, because that was going to be my next question. I love it.
Why do we go to bars after games and do the wrap up around?
Well, I know the answer to that.
but why does Gary always remind me not to drink on this thing, and I still do it?
It's kind of funny because social media kind of worked its way into it, and live.
Hold on that question now. Go ahead. Don't go ahead.
No, you want to answer your question?
Yeah, it was the getting to know, because of Bedwell. Considered us a good luck charm.
Okay.
At times he wouldn't talk to me when I was doing the scoreboard show. He would actually get an assistant coach to call because they get mad at me for saying, telling the truth. And but yeah, it was a great situation. But we got to know the players in those situations.
On that Byrd team, and then again on the Highland Springs team too. Yes.
We got to know the players, and if you look in the archives, it went from quick pictures in the press box with the Highland Springs guy, the outside linebacker that always put the warm-up music on the system. He would come up in the press box. It always
one of his jobs.
out.
He was starting linebacker for Highland Springs. He would come up and start the music before as the players started to come out and do pre.
And so the picture of me with an arm around it and stuff like that, and we were pointing at each other, and but it was just, so we started seeing all these little opportunities to tell these kids stories.
Well, in the mid 2010s, and you probably don't even know this part, in the mid 2010s, in that early area, 2012, during that area, we were still owned. Our radio station group was still owned by iHeart Media.
Okay, yeah.
And there was a big push to have blogs and have content on blogs and have live video. And so I had a blog, and we had a lot of high school content on it, and that we started doing video stuff. We started just thinking. That's where we came up with the idea of running Facebook Live when we have the winning coach in the press box.
Yeah,
it's a radio interview, but it's also run on Facebook Live. That's just a way to, and it was funny because they were like, we want clicks. We want how many clicks? What can you give us? And so it was like, all my ideas centered around high school football, and then we started doing post-game stuff. That's why we, and you would see, and I stole this from, ESPN, where they would do a basketball game or a baseball game, and like a college basketball game or a football game, and as soon on ESPN, as soon as the game's over, they might get a quick 2 or 3 questions with the coach from the sideline reporter, and then ESPN's on to the next thing. But they're like, go to ESPN.com and you can see our post-game extra, where the two announcers would break down the game and talk about it while stuff's going on. And I was like, Gary, we could do that.
Yes.
And so then we started doing post-game extra. So that was another wave of content. And then that kind of went by the wayside in terms of the pressure for blog pages and how many hits you got. I can remember they used to keep track, of how many views our videos would get. And we still do, but the corporate doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
So it was just, that it was the nonstop quest. That kind of was the beginning of some of that stuff. And we said, well, we know the players, let's do the players.
Yep.
And I still remember you remember the best viewed video we ever did. Number one was after Manchester won the state title in
Notre Dame people
2018,
kicked in.
we did a Facebook Live with Brendan Clark.
Okay.
Now, we did one with Tom, we did Coach Hall, we did one with several other players, but we did one with Brendan Clark. Somebody put a link to it on Notre Dame fan site. And that video, if we could get over 1,000 views, we would be like, that was a success. Well, that Brendan Clark video got like 6,000 views.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, and then I found out later how that happened, but it was, and so then we just started doing other things. We did, we would do, another thing we did was so one of the things, and I don't even remember have we been doing this the whole time? Gary and I like to, we'll get there early, and we have an on-site producer, and we get the equipment set up. And one of the on-site producer's jobs is to go to the field at the end of the game and corral the winning coach to bring him up to us.
Yep.
And so we would go down, we called it the field walk. We would go and walk, say it's a 7:00 kick. We're on at 6:30, 6:00-ish. We kind of have everything set up, ready to go in the press box. We'll go down, walk the field, chat with the coaches, see if there's any last minute information. Mostly it's just glad handing and enjoying the moment. You get to know assistant coaches, and if it's the first time we've ever done a team, we make sure the producer knows who the head coach is. And then, of course, when it's the teams we do all the time, they know. They're like, hey, I hope we talk to you after the game. They know. But and so then we would do a Facebook Live on the field.
I love them.
And but it would be the content of that Facebook Live was never much. And I remember he would always go find like a cheerleader or a manager from one of the teams to film it for us.
Player.
Or an injured player would film it for us, and we would do like a 2 or 3 minute hit on the field, kind of promoting what we're going to do. Well, then for some reason we started doing it in the car on the way to the game.
I love those.
which I live very, very close to Glen Allen High School.
Okay.
And Hermitage too. So if we're doing a game at Hermitage or at Glen Allen, it was a real challenge because, I remember one time we did a game at Hermitage, we drove around laps around the parking lot so we could finish our video. But so that kind of replaced the on-field pregame. Mm-hmm. And we just did it a couple times just to talk and have fun. Mm-hmm. We had no idea. I mean, no idea how that was going to be received. And that's become the most in-demand thing we do.
Yeah, because I look forward to it on Friday before I go to the games. I said, let me see what Gary going, what they going.
Oh, Danny Lewis from Virginia Prep.
I love Danny. Shout out to Danny.
Yeah, shout out to Danny. Danny's always like, of course, it's like that's must viewing. And if we don't do it for some reason, people are like, hey, how come you didn't do the on the road? Hey, shout out to Coach Kemper at St. Christopher's, one of the legendary guys in this area. And by the way, not just a legendary coach, one of the legendary human beings in this area too, Coach Kemper.
Yep.
But Coach Kemper, every Friday night, watches and comments on that video. And to this day, I don't understand what the appeal is. It's us riding in the car just talking about stuff. And so it's like Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing.
That'd be funny, especially with the guy in the back seat with Adam. Oh my God, it'd be so funny because he just sits there and you'd be like, "What you say?"
So in case you haven't figured it out, we rarely run stuff by each other.
That's what makes it great.
We barely run, and we don't run. And I think one of us would get out of the car if the other one got in the car and said, "I want to talk about this today," because we don't do that. But there
are occasions where we got in the car just a couple weeks ago where he goes, "Hey, I got a couple points I really want to make on the video." He didn't tell me what they were.
He just said he got a couple points.
I got a couple things.
Yeah, so. Because I might forget. But no, here's the secret sauce. He's in a position where he can mingle with his side hustle by being the director of the broadcast group. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm talking. There's been times when he's done. There's been periods of time where he does newscasts in Charlotte and things like that. But it's just the radio business as it is. Mm-hmm. And he's able to mix that time in, and it's worth it to the radio station because how much live programming do they have? Mm-hmm. If you take away college sports, which is, still local content. You take away the flying squirrels, a great product. The high school football is truly local.
Yes.
Truly local. And so we're lucky enough that a guy has as much clout as he has in the building. Mm-hmm. We have that, in a way. And how I got involved with it, Mike O'Toole, who you mentioned, who was the original guy, came to me in All Metro banquet. I had the assistant coach with me that was gonna take the recruiting spot for it, and I shook hands with Mike. I introduced him and Mike pulled me aside and said, "Hey, what are you gonna do? You're interested in?" Well, I've got some stuff I'm gonna be doing for Coach Taylor, but he goes, "Well, why don't you think about the scoreboard show, and or filling in for Coach Rinaldi if Coach Rinaldi needs a break, stuff like that." I said, "Well, I'm interested, Mike, but let me tell you what you do need. You need a guy to get in with the guy that's doing the scoreboard show, because two things happen. He's doing a good job, but he either got too much to do or not enough to do." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Fine, I'll get you an hour." And Bill McDonald almost fainted.
Wow.
He goes, how are we going to do that? And I said, "Look, first of all, I know these guys now. I've been paid to get to know them because I'm trying to recruit their players." Mm-hmm. I said, "We'll be fine. But if you're wondering, we're going to go ahead and there's two top recruits in the area. Mm-hmm. One of them was Bruce Branch from Huguenot, who went to Pitt State, and the other one was no other than Devon Simmons."
Wow.
And Simmons and I talked for the first time about that at one of the pre-walkthroughs this time, and he said he remembered it specifically. And at the time, I had gotten into, I could see the recruiting thing on the wall. And I had two, not one, but two fairy godfathers, Ronald Curry and Michael Vick.
Wow.
And I was starting to do recruiting, and all these guys you see now doing on ESPNU and all, and we were doing each other's shows because Ronald Curry was the number one recruit in the country, and they wanted to talk to a guy that had access to his information. That worked, and so all the other ones got to get me to do their shows. So I started finding out about Vic, started hearing stuff from Tech, and I started calling Michael Vick door number 2. And and again, it's meant to be. It's meant to be. Years later, when he declares for the NFL draft, his agent remembered that and invited me to the Boys and Girls Club.
Wow.
For that,
I remember. Yep.
So they did in that late '90s window. You guys did the scoreboard show and the preview show, right?
Yes.
So that was that Thursday nights?
And then we did Thursday night, the Powerade Pigskin preview, and football coaches used to say, they say it about the All Metro Banquet all the time. Nobody has anything like this. They said the same thing about the Thursday night show with Bill.
So that went away after 2 or 3 years. Gary left the station for a while and then came back. But it's interesting. One of the things that we've done in the last 5 years is we brought the Thursday show back.
Yeah.
It's now called the Thursday Walkthrough.
Yeah, I saw that.
And we did that in, I believe, 18 and 19, and that was a casualty of COVID. And then we brought it back this year, and so it was back this year, and so there's been a lot of twists and turns to it, but the anchor of all of it has been that game of the week. We started that in '93, and we've and Gary's added a lot to it. The recruiting element, the Thursday show, the scoreboard show, the online stuff, but the anchor that centers all of it is that game of the week broadcast.
Yep.
And it's
Well said.
Hey, this is where Gary and Gary are tonight. This is really the game of the week. And I love the fact that, and I want to give a shout out to Lane and Sean. Final Score Friday. They do an incredible job.
Absolutely.
And they have a game of the week too, and we'll often compare notes. Well, what's your game of the week? Well, what's your game of the week? So, if Sean's there and Danny Lewis is there from Virginia Preps, and if we're there, then it's the game.
It's the game.
It's the game of the week.
Yep.
And sometimes we are, in different directions. And, early in the season, Gary and I have this thing where we want to see as many teams as possible. Right. And then, later in the season, if you see the same team 3 weeks in a row, so be it. It's the game of the week. And then obviously in the playoffs, you end up, doing the same team a lot. But it's that game of the week broadcast has been the anchor and the centerpiece of all of it. But it's cool because it's like a piece of clay. You're constantly molding it and trying to make it better. And, and I think we've done that over the years.
You guys have, man, because for me, it just that whole excitement on Friday, man. I'm just going scrolling through social media, and I'm just looking to see where you guys are going, because a lot of people text you and say, "Where the game at?" And I'd be like, "Let me see what Gary and Gary are going first and see what's the hot game of the week," because a lot of times I'm working, I may not know.
I'm going to tell you, there are nights where we get into the second quarter and we wish we were at a different game.
And by the way.
And he'll blame me for that every time.
If things get real slow, I will throw him.
Feel like that?
I told you.
Yeah, we on the same, because that was my next question. I was like, did y'all get over these games and it don't be like this? Y'all wish y'all may have been crossed down somewhere else?
100%.
And we still use the same process all the time. And I can't even name it, but the process is, we'll start talking Sunday about, we'll talk a little bit on Friday after the game, because a lot of times if we're doing our job, if it's going for us the way we want it to go, one domino will knock over another domino, and then we'll be able to figure it out. But yeah, it goes back and forth, and now it's you've got all these programming things you have to consider. Thursday night, Friday night. That's why we've got this is another show. But we've got to change the culture of what's going on in youth sports, or we're going to kill the source of all these guys. Those, we've got 3 guys in 804 with 804 roots, 2 of them high school football players. The third one, Mike McCarthy, not the Cowboys coach. He's too fat to appreciate a football game anyway. But and I'm a Cowboys fan. But Mike McCarthy, Troy Gray, and Danny Worrell, both J.R. Tucker guys, both University of Richmond football players, are officiating the national championship game.
Congratulations.
There's 7 officials, and 3 of them from 804.
804.
But if we don't change the culture, and I realize I've gotten serious here, but it's a passion with me. If we don't change the culture, what's going on in youth football, we're going to kill that cradle. We're going to smash that cradle. That's where these guys got started. Talk to any official that's doing any playoff game. They started doing youth sports. And when parents' harassments and attitudes, and it trades off to the players, when that starts rubbing at you and all of a sudden that extra money doesn't mean anything to you, that's when you lose good people.
Yep. I know
Well
some
said.
officials now that are still, that didn't go on to the college ranks, that you'll see they'll do a JV game on Thursday night, a varsity game on Friday night, and then they're somewhere doing youth games all day Saturday.
All day Saturday.
Even after doing a varsity game on a Friday night. And so, the officials get a lot of grief, but they their role is critical. And they need more people, and I think they've
definitely
started to get some more people.
I didn't mean to be laughing, but I was thinking about the time that I was in a bar post game. We were not doing post game extra at the time, but I was in a bar post game, and I had some officials, because we had officials go to certain restaurants, and one night I said on the air, Bill was closing up. He said, "You heading out after this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to Gus's in Mechanicsville." And the next thing you know, Scott Stout said, "These guys are showing up because they don't want to go to Rose Marie's in the West End, because too far to drive."
Right.
And so they were going there. Well, we carried it a little bit too far, and we ended up being in it till like 3:30 in the morning, and some of those guys had to get up at 6:30 to go to the youth league games. But but those guys are no good. No, they were good. But it's just it's a culture. It's a tribe of people, the officials, the coaches. But it's got,
and that spills into what we do.
Yeah.
You build it, and I have a process, and I'm not saying it's the right process. And Gary's known for saying, and he's not the first one to say it, the will to prepare must be greater than the will to succeed.
Yeah.
And I think Gary will vouch that I personify that in the effort that I put in.
No question.
And I make a commitment at the beginning of the year. Every Thursday for Friday night, I go in person to the 2 schools of the game I'm doing.
Okay.
To talk to the coaches. That's where I get the interviews that I do in the pregame. It's also where I pick up a lot of information.
Yes.
It's also relationship building. I think about, the coaches who are long timers, that we now call friends. Tom Hall just stepped down after 25 years at Manchester.
Well, I was surprised.
And I feel like, and we haven't lost a friend, don't get me wrong, but I feel like our Friday night life, it's like I'm bumming that I'm not, when I do a Manchester game, I don't get to text Tom and go spend some time with him. And so, we build these relationships, and and that goes to the assistant coaches.
Yes.
That goes to players who have become coaches.
Yes.
I think about, I'll never forget, and this is a story I tell a lot, and Gary gets tired of hearing it, but 97 regional championship game, Verina and Thomas Dale, and I'm talking about this game, and it is 14 all late in the game, and Verona runs a fake reverse, which Mike Robinson swears to this day was supposed to be a reverse. I was supposed to get the ball. And I was like, well, Lamont Abrams, decided to fake it. He went 90 yards, and it's okay. And Verona won 21-14. I'm talking about this game, and Kevin Tucker, the coach at Thomas Dale, starts laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? He goes, yeah, I was starting fullback in that game for Thomas Dale. And I was like, oh, man, I'm old.
Wow.
And I think about, Coach Holmes, the new guy at Henrico, played at Highland Springs. I remember his games. There are so many guys now that are in the coaching ranks that I called Marcus their Lewis. Games. And so it's amazing. Sam Rogers is a great example at Hanover. I mean, we did tons of Sam's games at Hanover, and it's just it's full circle. It just reminds me that I've been doing this a long time. To see I also, one of the other roles I have is I am the longtime MC of the Virginia High School Hall of Fame inductions in Charlottesville. Now, stop laughing. I know what you're going to say. Let me finish. But to now see some of the 804 guys that like Michael Robinson got inducted a few years ago, and to see some of these 804 guys start to get inducted, that I was kind of able to document their careers in high school, and to see them now become Hall of Famers, it's overwhelming to me in a way to have been a part of it, and just think about the guy from freshman to dealing with coaches and players being inducted in the Hall of Fame. Watching guys. I see Damian Woody on ESPN. I see Michael Robinson on the NFL Network. I was like, yeah, I called those guys win the games when they were in high school.
Yep.
And so that's amazing to me. It just is, and I know I'm secure, and I know I'm good at what I do.
Yes.
But the fact, fortune has smiled upon me to be able to be a part of this for this long, and to have those ties that bind. Stop it. Just stop it.
5-time Sportscaster of the Year.
Not true, but
it's only once. But after working with him, I felt like he got screwed a couple times. So I added 2 times. That didn't sound good enough. But it is 5. But I will tell you this. Again, it was meant to be. Mm-hmm. He will be elected to the Virginia High School League Hall of Fame for doing Hall of Fame banquets.
30 years of play-by-play in high school doesn't hurt either.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
And I see Hall of Famers. I think of, I think of media Hall of Famers. I think of Marshall Johnson. Do you remember Marshall?
Oh, yeah.
He was the associate.
Talk to him on
guy. He was a walking high school record book. I mean, he was amazing. But, I think of like the coaches and the players and, the athletic director and the officials. Mm-hmm. I'm just a broadcaster, so I don't necessarily feel like, that is part of the Hall of Fame, but just the fact that I've been a part of it is all I need. So it's kind of cool.
No, I think it's great because it sets precedent for guys like me. Like people will say, man, why don't you go on after the field and talk to the coaches? And for me, I'm just a person of respect. You guys do it so well. I'm like, I don't want to even any part of that. I'm going to stay right here in my lane and do what I do because you guys, I could never, ever fill the shoes the way you guys do, especially when you guys talk to Coach Johnson and some of these Coach Tucker and all these other coaches after the game. I sit there and that's how I get all my information.
I do laugh when we get to know new coaches and they find out the routine, and they'll immediately, we walk on the field, they go, hey, I'll talk to you after the game. like they know they're going to win.
They're going to know. Because a lot of times, like I watched the one you guys, I guess, when Coach Johnson, and like, it's just having you guys and seeing you guys work, man, and how y'all talk to Coach Young. Because a lot of times y'all catch him off guard for questions and just how to see how he answers the questions. But y'all be really good at what you guys do, man.
Well,
I love it.
And the coaches like Coach Johnson, Coach Hall, Coach Bedwell back in the day when he was at Bird, these are guys where we would see them you had playoff games 3 and 4 and 5 times a year. Mm-hmm. They got very used to who we are and what we do, what we're going to ask, and the chemistry's there. Stu Brown, all his years at Verona, Stu got very, very comfortable with it. and other guys too. Kevin Tucker, at Ricky Irby, Billy Mills, Billy Mills at Dinwiddie, another guy we've gotten to know really well over the years. And then, some of the new guys as well, that we've, started to get incorporated with. And, it's just, like I said, it's an honor to be a part of it. And I'm glad kind of what we do is viewed as a traditional part of 804 high school football.
I want to transition into this year. We talked earlier about the Freedom Highland Springs game, and I kind of want to get your take on the state championship game in Class 6, which was a heck of a game.
Well, I'm going to let the analysts do most of that.
Okay.
But I will tell you a couple things. When you play a good football team, you can't fall behind 28-0.
Yeah.
That's just all there is to it. The other thing I will say is, I learned a lot about Christian Martin, and I learned a lot about Highland Springs. You're down 28-0. They didn't quit.
No, they did.
They
not.
did not quit, and they didn't. It's like they didn't lose. They just ran out of time.
Yeah.
And so, but I was impressed. That was my first real look at Freedom, and they got those 3 receivers going D1, and they're good. But the running back, the Overton kid, is the one that makes it all go. He's special. And, and they're well coached, and they know who they are and what they do. And they jumped on Highland Springs and all deserve credit to Freedom. But I was impressed that Highland Springs, and it doesn't surprise me, they never quit. And they found a way to get back in the game. My one little stat, I love to throw stats in there. Freedom hadn't punted since the Garfield game,
right,
which was September 22nd.
Wow.
They punted 4 times all season. Highland Springs made them punt 3 times in the state championship game. Now,
one was blocked and one was returned for a touchdown.
Freedom still won, but Highland Springs was right there. And so I'll let you take it from there.
They are an incredible team, and they are about as gifted 1 to 22 of the starters, and they had a bunch of guys going both ways actually, as did Patrick Henry at the time.
See, that's what I was
in
going to say.
1995. But let me tell you something. Yeah, look. There's only going to be one Patrick Henry. And I didn't spend a lot of time because all of Freedom's tape looked the same to me.
Right. Exactly. It's
catch the ball, run the ball,
and
dance around the end zone.
Right.
But let the things play out. Where does everybody go? Here's the thing. And Patrick Henry should be always spoken of in reverent tones because of his team.
You talking about 94?
94.
The first game,
Tim.
The first game that I ever, yeah, I know. The first game that I ever missed, that I ever got to watch a game, was my daughter was cheering the last game at Patrick Henry. Ray saw me standing on the sideline because I don't know how to sit in the stands. And Ray said, come on over, stand by me. By that time, he had become an administrator. It's the early 2000s. And
Ray was famous even when he was more than an administrator. When games got tight, he would go stand by himself at the 20-yard line and just stare at what was going on.
So anyway, he points down to the other sideline and he says, go introduce yourself. I know you met him when he was a senior. Damon Woody was there because they had an off week. And so we called up, and we knew it because I had talked to his parents, and I had tried to talk to him in Hampton because people don't realize how much he improved. He wasn't even a two-way player.
Wow.
At the start of that season, but by the time he got to playoffs, he was a really good defensive player too. But so we talked about that team, and he had some impressions, and that's the story. But again, I was down because I was missing my craft. But you get to talk about him, about Brady, Brady was all of a sudden becoming
Yes.
a note writer. And he said, but he talked about and you could tell the analyst in him. I never saw him as an analyst, but I know how well thought out his answers were when I asked questions. Mm-hmm. And he said, but let me tell you about that group that Brady came in with. Everybody, draft choices, free agents, trades, everybody that came through that door that year knew how to play. Mm-hmm. And so when the Belichick way was being developed, these guys knew, well, at least from talent acquisition, we need to be talking to these guys. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about Brady was just a gunslinger. But then he transitioned into, but let me tell you about what they're building there. And that impressed me. And sometimes I speak for him when I hear him answering questions about Brady and Belichick and stuff like that. Wow. By the way, they kind of steal away from it. But yeah, he talked about just, the reverence of players. And let me tell you, players know at that level when they're being coached well. Mm-hmm. They know that stuff. In fact, there's high school kids that coach well. But back to Patrick Henry and those players, you have Damian Woody, not even the best player of his team. You had help me here, Gary. Daniel Derricott played for me in arena football. Went to Canada.
Tim
was a defensive back.
Yeah, well, you had Derricott, you had Ricky Wilkerson, you had Andre Curtis, you had Keith Short, you had
Kinney.
And of course Aaron Kinney was the guy who got the most attention. He went on to Florida,
and then went to the NFL.
But yeah, that
I got to talk to Earl extended times when he was at Florida, and he was Spurrier's whipping boy. Spurrier always has one. Mm-hmm.
But going back to Freedom, I just think,
he played a lot, but he didn't know he was going to play until Friday because Coach treated him like crap on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Freedom's not going anywhere. Overton's back. The one receiver,
Courtney, I think he committed today.
The one that's going to Clemson,
right? Just
committed
Juju.
to Clemson a couple weeks ago. Juju, he's back.
Mm-hmm. And Courtney decommitted from Indiana and committed earlier today to UVA.
Oh, okay.
That's I think the one with the one-handed catch.
I wondered if the
one-handed catch and the last minute extend your arm.
Extend your arm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. I wondered if he might change his commitment with the coaching change at Indiana.
Yeah.
But Freedom's not going anywhere, and Highland Springs is not going anywhere. So Coach Chris was the one that said it. He goes, I think we might be over, and I think he told you that in the parking lot before the game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we might be overseeing today the launch of a new rivalry.
Yes.
With Highland Springs Stonebridge became a rivalry because they played over and over again in state playoffs. Mm-hmm. That might be what we're seeing with Highland Springs and Freedom.
Yep, and this is the thing. I was going to ask you, with all the teams that you've seen, the Patrick Henrys, the Highland Springs 2018, and what would you say if you had to rank them? 2018 Springs, 2018 Manchester, this Freedom team we know what they did last year, but this year, I know I hate to put you on the spot.
You try to get me in trouble.
You listen, because I've been telling people on this show, and Tim has been sitting here. How many times have you heard me talk about this 94 Patrick Henry team, Tim? That's Derricott sat right here in this chair. and I'm just like, why do y'all keep forgetting this?
I will say this. I'm not sure how I would rank them.
Well, that's not even do a rank. That's just.
But I think 94 Patrick Henry, 2015 Highland Springs.
Okay.
That's the Dortch Wallace State.
Wallace team, yes.
And 2018 Manchester would be the three teams that I would talk about first.
Okay.
Am I missing anyone, Gary?
I mean, those Bird teams was good, but
I have a tendency to give a lot of credit to these teams and evaluating them, and it's cheating a little bit about what the guys do at the next level.
Right.
They don't have to be NFL players, but if they produce at the next level.
The Bird, I guess, would it be the first of those three Bird teams?
Because I was going to say.
The first had Terrence Irvin.
Yeah.
You had Rayshard Ashby, but also had
Paul Robertson.
Right. Paul Robertson had Grayson and Wilkins and and some of those guys that really that team was legit. I mean, they were really
That
good.
first one was something.
But as good as they all were, there was no Greg Dortches or Kayvon Wallace's on that team. But the '94 team. It's weird, and how would the 94 team do against these teams? It's a whole different era of football.
Right.
And the other thing is that 94 team stands out because it was so much better than everything else at that time in the 804. Is that a fair statement?
No question.
That would be fair.
Whereas 2012 Bird, 2015 Highland Springs, the later Highland Springs teams, the 2018, and even Highland Springs and Dinwiddie last year.
Right.
But it's kind of become what's expected. So it's kind of not apples to apples anymore. So we could maybe have a discussion about the last decade. But that 94 Patrick Henry team, you go back to, 79 with Petersburg, Gary?
Right.
And then you look ahead into the 2000s. And, now the 99 Verona team didn't win the state title.
But they was good. They was legit.
They were legit.
Oh, I was upset they didn't win.
When you talk about Lamont Abrams and Michael Robinson and Cordell Roan and guys named Lewis that were both pretty good.
Right.
Those teams were really, really good. But, it's just that when you look at Damian Woody and Aaron Kinney and
Andre
Curtis. Andre Curtis, and he's heard me say this before. I think Andre Curtis Derek Cott was the straw that stirred all of it.
Thank you.
But Andre Curtis might have been the key to the whole thing.
The whole thing.
He basically ran the show at middle linebacker, and he played center, right? Mm-hmm. Right, Gary?
Yep.
And so he anchored the offensive line.
Which never is paired anymore.
No.
Dick Butkus, Andre Curtis, that's it.
Right.
And Andre Curtis, now I've lost track of him, but he has made a career as an assistant coach in the NFL.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he has been, I don't know if he still is, but he has been a longtime assistant in the NFL. And so, and then you look at, obviously, Damian Woody had a long career in the NFL.
Yes.
Aaron Kinney had a cup of coffee in the NFL. Derek Cott had a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Made a living in the CFL for a while.
Yeah.
And Keith Short had a cup of coffee in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's 4 guys.
That's what I try to tell.
Keith Short was the best high school player.
And Derek Cott said that sitting right here. I try to tell
I've told Derek Cott what to say.
Thank you. Shout out to Derek.
And by the way, I will tell you this. You said, they didn't know how to pass. All I know is Daniel Derricott went to the Canadian Football League with that big thing and asked to play quarterback.
Well, what I love is
don't get on the waiver while I'll run the offense.
You see this, in the last decade, the read option has kind of come into vogue, and are you shaking your head? Am I saying something wrong?
No, you're exactly right. Yep.
The read option's come into vogue. So the quarterback holds the ball in the belly, and then he'll pull it out and run. Well, I was like, why is that in vogue? Daniel Derricott was running that in 1994.
Thank you.
I know. But Coach, I think Coach Long never really put a lot at any risk.
It wasn't a read. It was basically, but he held the ball
really
in the belly,
good fake.
and then he pulled it out and then followed the guy through the hole.
It did.
And,
they didn't.
So I'm glad I'm not losing my mind.
Run that over and over again until somebody stops.
Because he was one of the interviews that I always wanted the guys I want to talk to because of what they did back then. Because everything got overshadowed by Ronald Carey. And what he did, and I said that if Ronald Carey, and I know I used Allen Iverson, but I know that Ronald Carey, they had a couple of championship teams, but I would love to see that 94 team against any one of those.
I never saw him play in high school, but the people who know that I know have told me that as good as Curry was, and as good as Michael Vick was, and as good as Aaron Brooks was, that Allen Iverson might have been better than all of them.
And Aaron Brooks said that right here.
I saw him take over a game against
Huguenot. I was there too.
Yep.
And what I saw on that field that day, I said, because it was 16-0, right? Yep. And I was like,
I think it was 13.
Yeah, 13. Yeah, they was down.
Coach Kozlowski tells the story at halftime. Iverson came to him, a junior.
Yeah, he was a junior,
and said, "Would just let me take
care of it.
Just let me take care of it." And he took care of it.
And he took care of it too.
He had a big old tight end, and at one point, the word was starting to roll around that conversation had happened. and he had a big old tight end, and they were running down the field, and the kid had either a big block or a big catch for like 3 or 4, and he was playing defense too, and he was tired, and Cos waved him out, sent the guy in, and I was just started going like this, switching back. I needed one more play.
Man,
You can't take him out yet.
That
Oh,
was
my
it.
goodness.
Hey, which, by the way, the thing of it is, we've got our timeline and stuff like that. We could do a whole thing with personalities and people that are in and out and
I mean, you're making me rack my brain here, and there are teams that I don't even think about,
right.
that I have to come back to. The 99 Verona team, even though the Blue Devils didn't win the state title that year, they deserve to be in the discussion.
Right.
But then, I think of, there are so many others.
I mean, I think about the 92, I think was it 93, 92, Thomas Dale with, I was at that state against Pulaski County.
That was 92.
Yeah.
That was the year before I started doing it.
It was
Yep,
Rudy
that
Johnson.
was Ricky Hall and
Oh, yeah.
Ken Oxendine.
Right?
All right.
Yeah, I did my first Bird Dale game. Oxendine was Oxendine's senior year.
He was a grown man.
Ricky Hall and Ken Oxendine. Wow. And Pulaski County
Yeah, I was at that
took
game.
care of business. Coach Joel Hicks. It's funny. I think about, you go back to the Hall of Fame. I think about, you mentioned Kozlowski, and some of these guys. I've got Steve Ragsdale, the legendary coach at Giles County, and Joel Hicks at Pulaski, Willis White at Salem, and I could go on and on. And, all these guys, I've seen them come through being inducted into the High School Hall of Fame, and getting to talk to some of those guys has been really cool. And so, it's, and Gary and I, you if you listen to us on Friday nights, occasionally we'll go into the weird place of talking about a game between, who knows, Fort Chiswell and Honaker, or Lord Botetourt against William Fleming, or
Yeah, I can't mess with that one.
I mean, we will do stuff like scores. We'll get scores. And
only meant to him. But it's like
it
Honaker.
only means something to me.
Or somebody will bring up Honaker. I was like, well, Heath Miller played.
Yeah,
quarterback.
exactly.
Honaker
I would do that.
I'm like, it's like it always comes. Lord Botetourt. Lord Botetourt. That's the team Hopewell.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we start talking about Travion Henderson. And how
Oh my God, he's another one.
I love Coach Irby. I love Hopewell. But if a D5 or D6 team had been playing, we probably would have been there.
Right.
But they weren't. And so we went to Lynchburg, and I am so glad we did, because to see Travion Henderson score 5 touchdowns in that game, the way they dominated, it was just to be there to see Hopewell do that and win the state title.
Yeah, he was something to see.
That was awesome. That was incredible. So, the opportunities have come in waves. And, Travion Henderson, you haven't asked me about players, and I hope you don't.
Yeah.
But Travion would be in the discussion, I can tell you that.
Well, I tell you what, I saw something yesterday, and I read it, and that's why I was going to go to that. They were comparing who was better. Well, Jeff Overton be another Travion Henderson, because I guess he got the Ohio State offer. And I'm sitting here, it's like, man, this man has a whole nother year. But when I used to...
You got to remember, Travion Henderson didn't have a senior year.
No, he didn't. Exactly.
Because he was committed to be a January enrollee.
Right.
And then COVID happened. And the
he didn't
season
play.
moved to the spring, so he didn't play.
He didn't play. So we didn't get to see what could have been.
So apples to apples, it's Overton now.
Right.
And, and I can't really say. I've only seen Overton play one game.
And that one game was just...
Oh, he was great.
He was...
You hang 270 and a couple touchdowns on
that defense.
Springs. Yeah. That's... And I will tell you, Overton killed them, but, you look at that prolific passing game that they had, and the quarterback threw 50-some touchdowns during the season.
Evans, yeah.
They shut them down.
Yeah, they took that away.
They took that away.
Well, they stopped. It was the only way Holland Springs was going to catch up.
Right.
And that's the thing, when you're moving the ball between tackles. The the brilliant thing, and talk about freedom from a tactical standpoint, I really like the fact that the quarterback keeps early on.
Right.
That was a big deal.
Right, because that was not something that was kind of, they did a lot of. So that was kind of a wrinkle, and it really helped them. That even though that may not have been scoring plays, it really helped them get the upper hand early part of that game.
The other thought I had, and we already talked about the limitations of the quarterback who now has Phil Simms' record for touchdown passes. But
right, saying that.
But my favorite thing to do with these teams is, it's great to talk about the star players and everything, but the great thing that makes high school football really great are the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th best player on each unit.
Yes.
And Patrick Henry, all those guys we named, and they had 3 angry white guys on the offensive line that could play.
100%.
Country boys. And one of the things I found myself watching with freedom was, I said, I wish I had time to look at their non-stars. Because one of the things that concerned me about Highland Springs is I loved Highland Springs' depth.
Right.
From a high school prospect. But keep in mind, the Springers had gone into every state championship game with elite offensive and defensive linemen.
Yes.
Flanking really great high school football players. What they had on defensive line and offensive line was 9 really good football players, high school football players. They were missing that punch. And they had depth for those guys too.
I want to throw one other thing in here, and that is, and I just, to trumpet the 804 a little bit, Freedom has done a great job. In Northern Virginia, you think Northern Virginia, Westfield had a run where they did really, really well. You think some of the guys that went through that program, Sean Glennon and Eddie Royal and Evan Royster, and C.D. Hilton had a run, when Ahmad Brooks was there. They've been programs. Robinson had Mike Emo. There've been pockets and up there. And, the 804 had its moments, and you mentioned Pulaski County. And I remember back in the day, G.W. Danville was one of the power programs in the state. But you know what? For a long time, high school football in Virginia was all about the 757.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you think back, we mentioned all those guys. You think back to Lawrence Taylor. You think to Kenny Easley.
Ron Springs.
You think to Dwight Stevenson, who played for Mike Smith at Hampton and anchored some great Miami Dolphin offensive lines. We could go on and on with guys who have come out of the 757. So that is a richly deserved reputation. I think famous Amos Lawrence came out of the 757. Kelvin Bryant. There's so many guys. Carolina had a pipeline to the 757 for the longest time.
Yes.
I say all of that to say this. The 804 has closed the gap.
That's what I've been trying to, that's the reason why I started this thing.
Has closed the gap.
Thank you.
Okay? You're seeing more and more 804 guys playing on Sunday.
And can you, I want to get your opinion. Why do you think that is?
I do wonder why that is.
Glenn Lee.
I think we had.
Say it again.
What did you
Glenn
say?
Lee.
Glenn Lee. Shout out to Glenn Lee.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, a few years ago at the All-Star game, there was a guy who played wide receiver at Trinity Episcopal named Tink Boyd.
Yeah.
Remember Tink Boyd?
That's my son's teammate.
And so Tink Boyd was at Trinity, and we were like, we got an eyeful of him at this All-Star game. We hadn't seen Trinity play. We're like, holy cow, he's amazing. And then somebody says, oh, he's a Glenn Lee guy. I was like, oh, of course he is. Okay, I totally understand it. Glenn Lee's part, that is part of it. I think we had the right coaches in the right programs at the right time.
Right.
I think a lot of things came together.
Resources and
and you look at what David Bedwell did at NC Bird. You look at what Lauren Johnson has built at Highland Springs. You look at Tom Hall. He had some struggles, couldn't beat LC Bird.
Patrick Kane.
Then he elevated Patrick Kane at Hermitage is another great example. Billy Mills at Dinwiddie. Things have happened. And the rising tide, the saying goes, a rising tide raises all boats. Well, it hasn't raised every boat, but it's raised a lot of boats in the 804. The 804's closed the gap. The 804 puts, and listen, college recruiters know it too. And
Right.
so I just, and it's been fun to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. And the last decade has been the proof in the pudding.
I'll tell you a reason to be happier, despite the fact we don't have a public school with a state championship. The city schools are back.
Amen to that.
And we talked about that a lot down the stretch. And, you think there are 5 city schools, and 3 of them went to the playoffs. And did all 3 of them win at least one playoff game?
Yeah, because Huguenot beat Powhatan
Right.
and lost to Varina.
And Thomas Jefferson beat somebody and then lost to
For
Armstrong. Right.
And Armstrong got
Went
to the regional championship
game.
and lost that, which was, I guess you could make an argument that they could have won that game.
All I know is that has always been important to me, and it became very, very important when I started recruiting in Hampton.
And I will tell you, I'm thrilled about it because I miss the days. I told you my first game in 1993 was Huguenot against John Marshall.
John Marshall, yeah,
At Hubby Field.
At Hubby Field. Yep.
Right,
those were the games to go to.
Let me tell you what I loved in my during my Coach Rinaldi 15 years, and that is Bird against Huguenot was must see theater.
I would,
and I will tell you,
going to those
and I will
games.
tell you also, the Huguenot Falcons are also the home of the fastest guy in football pads that I've ever seen in 30 years, and that's Deron Ferguson.
And he played at Glenlee.
Shout out to Deron, man.
He played at Glenlee.
Got to talk to Deron Ferguson. His son Karan played at Holland Springs last year, and his younger son's at Holland Springs
And
now.
his daughter's at Thomas Dale.
His daughter's at Thomas. But Deron Ferguson was the fastest guy in football pads I have ever seen. And I will tell you, Jakiri Henley at Holland Springs may have come in second. When there was that at Holland Spring at Manchester last season, he caught a punt
I saw that. I was there.
and went to the. If you were sitting on where were you? Sitting?
I was on the visiting side.
So he came toward you and turned the corner. And he turned on the
Jets and went straight down that sideline.
And he'll tell you he made that play. I invoked the name Deron Ferguson, and I did not know that Karan Ferguson was Deron Ferguson's son. Did not know that.
I just met them recently.
And so I mentioned it to Coach Johnson in the post game, and I said that punt return is the fastest player I've seen since Deron Ferguson at Huguenot. And he starts laughing. I'm like, what's so funny? He goes, Karan Ferguson's his son. I was like, yeah, of course he is.
Yep, that's his son.
So anyway, that is, I love the fact that the city schools are back. I love the fact that Huguenot's back. Coach Pruitt, it's like TJ was the feel-good story with Eric Harris in his first year, and Coach Scott brought Huguenot back, and they got all the attention. And it's like in the playoffs, Coach Pruitt and Armstrong are like, "Hey, don't forget about us. Don't you forget about us." So
yeah, and that's good because now you're going to see Coach Pruitt and the things that he's doing over there, and Coach Scott. What he's building, from with LCA and transitioning over to Huguenot. I'm just glad because those are the days. I grew up in the city of Richmond. I went to John F. Kennedy, which is now Armstrong, and those were the games our team stunk. So let's just call it what it is.
Right.
Great athletes, but we didn't win a lot of games. But to go to those games where they weren't playing, to go to the John Marshall Huguenot game.
I love the fact that city games are back on the radar
again.
But I'm saying, I know they're back on the map, but you know what else they are? They're now back on our radar when it comes to making Game of the Week choices.
And I'm so happy for that.
And I'm pretty excited about that too.
And Harry Lee Daniel, shout out to him because he said that we have to keep getting behind high school sports. I mean, he talked about that 2 weeks ago. He was like, man, we really have to do that.
Listen, there's been a lot of problems in the city, in city high schools. We all know that. I'm not breaking news.
Right.
But you know what? Football has given something for the city schools to be excited about, something positive, and I think that's huge. I think it's great for the city of Richmond, and I want to see it keep going. And shout out to Coach Scott, to Coach Harris, and Coach Pruitt for the jobs that they have done and look to be continued to do.
See, this is why I tell you I have these guys on here because the knowledge that they have, I don't have to say it. I didn't even have to pull it out of them. this is, man, I just love it. I just want this thing to go on and on and on because, and I'm glad that everybody who's going to be watching this, hearing the knowledge and everything that you got, because I can sit here and say it all day, but the people who don't watch you, I guarantee you have brand new fans now. I promise you, because a lot of guys was like, they say, yeah, we know him and stuff like that. But I say, promise you, listen and watch. Because it's so much knowledge you guys have that we haven't even talked about yet.
Well, it's just, it's nice, and you got to kind of own it a little bit. I'm a little bit frustrated because I like staying busy and stuff like that, but I'd love to stop and be able to answer. I'd like to stop working and being able to answer and look into the camera and say, if you've got a high school football team and I can help you do anything, I'd love to come over and talk to it during the off season.
And I will tell you this also, and I'm speaking for Gary here, and I don't do that very often, but I do it occasionally. And in addition to that, and building upon that, Stu Brown, a couple years ago, started a fundraiser for the Varina and New Kent football program.
Yes.
It was a golf tournament.
A pigskin.
Right. And Gary and I have gone and played in that golf tournament the last 2 years. And what I want to say, if there's any coaches out there, if you have a fundraiser, if there's something we can promote, if there's something we can participate in, we want to pay it forward. As part of the high school football community, we want to support the high school football community. So if there are fundraisers, if there's anything I can promote,
Something I get that is a real.
if there's anything I can support, we want to do that, because we want 804 high school football to be the best that it can be, and we do our part, but we want to give back too. So
no, and I
am I okay to speak for you on that front?
Yeah, there's no question. The funniest thing about it is I'm sitting here and we're doing this, and we're, first of all, I wouldn't have done it another way. My best conversations have been in stadium parking lots. I can tell you that. That's the one thing. And
that's what I met you guys.
But this is a nice validation to what we want to do.
And if entry had been on time, we may not have had this conversation. So everything happens for a reason.
Again, like I said,
exactly.
I said it was
just waiting to get in this game.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I'm laughing because Gary and I have started talking, and like I said, we don't do a lot of planning. This is improv, a lot of times. I
tell people that all the time.
But with him and I, it's become we hint every once in a while. I forget where we were, but you let it out one time. Well, you might not be back next year.
Yeah, I saw you guys sitting around today.
And people, and the thing of it is, that conversation has kind of energized us a little bit because it is a big deal. And if anybody has been saying, all right, let's get together. Every time you see Gary, tell him thank you for what you do, because now we have players doing it.
Yes.
Players doing it, and they don't even thank their mom when they give them a 5-star meal, and they're thanking us for what we do.
Here's the thing, and when I say this, it's not about us, because it's not. It's about the kids. It's about the game. It's about 804 football.
Yes.
But in an era where only one of the 3 local TV stations is doing sports.
Right.
Only covering sports. Lane,
right.
Shout out to Lane.
Happen to be our partners, by the way.
Shout out to Lane and Sean.
Sean, yeah.
And so, they were undefeated and undisputed. Now they're unopposed. Right. The champions of the world. It's important for us to do what we do. And I know that, for a younger generation, that doing football on the radio seems antiquated in some ways, and I understand all of that, but we're going to keep doing what we're doing, at least for now, because it's important for us to keep doing what we're doing, because 804 high school football deserves to have a light shined on it. So for now, we're going to keep shining that light.
Thank you. Yes, we need it, man, because this year I started off when I interviewed, I think I talked to a lot of the coaches, Phoebus, Coach Blunt, Coach DeRee McCain, and I also talked with Coach Johnson. And I told him, I said, this year to me was probably one of the most anticipated high school seasons that I've been a part of, just simply because all the movement that was going around and, some of the transitionings of everything that was happening. And I guess with the social media part of it, especially me being new part of the media and going to Florida with Highland Springs, and just the love and everything that everybody gave me, Rick Lilly and Harry Lee and Coach Johnson and the whole staff and the Springer Nation and it's just been, and of course East End, Verona, I've always given that to me. It's just been a ride for me.
They know a little football in the East End.
Yes, they do. they do, and I can't thank them enough for the support they have been giving Ballin and VA, and I know what they've been doing for you. I mean, you said it, Glenn Lee, already, so I already know. But I can't wait to. If I want to fast forward it, but I don't. I want to do that, but I can't wait to next season already.
I need to recharge for a few weeks, and then I'll be right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you guys have been rolling. You guys have been rolling.
And when I mentioned about and it's nice of Gary to quote me on that because I forget so much stuff I say. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to but when I said there was going to be new rivalries set up,
Yes.
I believe that. But it takes some time to get a rivalry going. Somebody's got to be mad. And I think the Springers
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
going to be interesting. I think the Springers and I think all our guys that have won state championships, it's going to be a little bit more complicated at Manchester. But
Right.
our recent state champions are all a little hot under the collar. And all you have to do is channel that into the right amount of preparation and analyze what you do and learn from what worked and learn from what didn't work. Mm-hmm. And I'm with you guys, and because I'm looking forward to calling a game when I'm 70 years old, which is a lot closer than I want to talk about.
Right. And then after we do that, then we'll talk about me calling a game when I'm 60. I'm right on the doorstep of that. So we're right there. So very excited. I can't believe we just put a capper on the season. You get in the middle of it, you can't see the forest for the trees. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden we're in Charlottesville, and then we're in Ashland calling the Big River rivalry, and it's like, whew. Okay, it's in the books.
It's in the books,
And how cool is that All-Star game, by the way?
Man, look, I didn't get to go because I think I was covering another game this weekend, but I said, man, I wanted to see. I think somebody had it live, and
Oscar, RVA Sports Production
had a
live stream of it, yeah.
Yep, and I was just like, man, I wanted to go, but I didn't get a chance to go.
Well, I just think it's neat, and I shout out to the Touchdown Club for putting that game together. The river is the natural dividing point, north of the river, south of the river. The fact that Tom Hall and Lauren Johnson were the head coaches added a little to it this year.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's cool. And we have always positioned it as a celebration of 804 football for this year was a celebration of 804 football in 2023. Mm-hmm. We saw a bunch of great players, but every penny that comes in outside of the expenses to put the game on goes to local charity.
Well, that's great.
And at Christmas time, being able to give money to charity and celebrate high school football, just another great thing that comes out of that. And kudos to the folks who put that together. And, and so it's there's a lot to like about what's going on in the 804. A few things we got to fix up, but there's a lot to like about what's going on in 804 high school football.
Man, that's well said. And I'm going to get you guys out on that, man. I thank you guys for being here, and I appreciate it so much. But I'm going to get you guys out here. We got 4 minutes. Y'all talked about wise choice.
We did talk about wise choice.
A lot of people don't know about Wise Choice.
Oh, I know about Wise. Look at me. I know where the good food is.
Listen, that place has been. Oh my! I used to deliver drinks. I work for 7-Up, and
He really does watch.
And so, listen, I try to tell you.
I'm going.
I'm going to tell you. You talked about Wise Choice, and I was like, not too many people know about Wise Choice. If you haven't been there, ladies and gentlemen, you need to go check them out.
They have a menu, and I'm going, it's like 20 different things on that menu.
Yes.
And I order a chicken biscuit, and I'm going, man, what am I doing? And then all of a sudden, I bite in that thing, and I said, man.
For those that don't know, you get off the Rockville Mannequin exit, you turn left, and it's the first gas station convenience you come to on your left.
Yep.
And their breakfast is legendary. And
the real legends.
I told the guys, I told Dash, our producer, and Gary, I said, I really liked the venue at ODU last year for the state championship
Yes.
game. There were problems for the players and getting in and out of the stadium, but from a media standpoint, it was great.
It was great.
I said the best part about going back up to UVA, it's a shorter drive and Wise Choice.
See? I said, man, when I saw that, I bust out laughing. I said, I'm going to bring that out, man. But Gary, thank y'all so much, man. I could go on for hours more, man.
Thank you for what you're doing. This was a blast.
Yeah,
thank you for asking us to be here. This was
5-time broadcaster of the year.
Oh, stop it.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all don't do anything else, please go follow Gary and Gary 804.
Can I promote our social media?
Yes, please plug it.
On the app formerly known as Twitter, I'm at GHessRVA. He's at Coach Criz. And yes, we have a Facebook page called 804 Football with Gary and Gary. And we put a lot of content on there, less during the off season. I notice he's more active during the off season. I take care of the heavy lifting during the season. But we throw some content. Next thing we'll be doing is getting ready for the All Metro banquet, which will be coming up on February 12th. The All Metro team, I think, is going to be announced here in the next week to 10 days. So
Okay.
And I've partnered with a bunch of guys want to talk X's and O's nationwide now at the college and the high school level, and we're starting to fit some of that stuff in too.
Okay.
And so if you got something you saw and you liked, and you want to run it through me, I certainly we'll work with you on it.
Well, thank you for what you do, and thank you for having us.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. I just wanted to thank y'all because I wouldn't be here without watching guys like you, Dwight Vick, and some of the other guys that's been doing it for so long. You know, of course, we mentioned Sean and Lane. So thank you.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
What he said. And make sure that y'all like, subscribe, and please, this is how we keep the lights on in here, and we're out. Appreciate y'all watching the episode again today, y'all. You know, go over and make sure that y'all check out my man, Stockel.com for any of your home buying needs. Appreciate it. Thanks again.